Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the sit down. Today's episode is going to be about the real estate process. So, if you're in the market for a purchase, you're in the market for a sale, or you're just looking to invest into your very first rental property, please stay tuned to this episode because it's very important to you in the sense that you can't know what to do unless you know where you're going. So stay tuned to this episode. And the one thing I want to bring to light with this is whenever you're getting involved in a real estate transaction, there's two things that you're going to need. One, pre-approval. Two, proof of funds. So, depending on who you are and your circumstances, you're either going to need to be working with a lender to provide that pre approval letter to basically make an offer on a house, or vice versa. If you're not working with a lender and you happen to have the cash on hand, you're going to need proof of funds. Now, the proof of funds can come in either two ways. It can either come in one, basically a letter from the bank testifying to the fact that you do have the necessary funds available to purchase said property at such an amount. Option two is statements basically of your bank account just saying, yep, it's there, we're good. Personally, I think the first one's better. If you are getting bank statements, it's more private to just get a letter from the bank stating this is what it is, have them write it, have them sign it, and then send that over. It's much more private and it's just easier for everyone overall. And it's basically, from a bank, so it's vetted. Now, you're going to buy your first property. You have your pre-approval in hand, or you have your proof of funds in hand. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to be putting an offer in on a house. Now, this step, very important. Make sure you are working with a realtor. They're going to be able to get you in the property. They're going to be able to compete when it comes time to actually present offers, and they're subject matter experts of the market. So make sure that you're working with a professional, knowledgeable realtor to make sure that when you are in the offer process, that you're the most competitive offer. And these sometimes when you're in the competitive market, you're not always going to like the answers that you hear, but also take some time, be mindful that their job is to help you win. That's the reality. A lot of times, depending on the house, depending on where you are in price, there's not necessarily going to be a deal, but make sure you know that when you're getting into a certain price range. If there's 18 offers on the table, it's not going to, I'm going to be honest, you're not going to get a deal on that house. But if you want to win, just take the advice of the subject matter expert because they do this every day. They're putting in multiple offers every single day. So work with a professional on that. Now, next phase. You won the house. Congratulations. You're a rock star. You got the offer accepted from the seller. Now, that doesn't mean you're home free. You got the offer accepted. That's great. Awesome. It's going to go through a review period, typically an attorney review period. It usually lasts about 3 days. First day doesn't necessarily count, and then 3 business days after. So grand total of usually about 4 days. So when you're going through the attorney review period, certain states have this, certain states do not. So depending on which state you are in, has it, and some don't. Some are attorney states, some are not. So sometimes this entire phase gets skipped and you're moving on. If you do have the attorney review period, remember that it is their job to tell you risks. It's their job to tell you things that could potentially happen. And it's also their job to basically go over the contract with you and make sure that you understand it to the best of your ability. So keep that in mind. It is their job to basically play devil's advocate with you. Don't let that deter you in the fact that, yes, you're entering a legally binding contract, but just note that if you're using a realtor, you're using a standard contract that was blessed off by many people time and time again, and they're not using a contract that somebody typed up in their basement. If somebody's using a contract that isn't substandard, that is a contract you want an attorney to look over left, right, front, center. Because if it's a standard contract that everybody is using, odds are there's not going to be language in there that's ultimately there to hurt either buyer or seller. It's usually pretty fair. So that's just important to note when you're going through that phase. Next phase. Most people don't know about this one, but the next phase is you're going to be updating the abstract and the survey. So your abstract is basically the history of the property. Now this is for the sellers. So if you're a seller, this is something that you're going to be doing. Now this is not on the buyer. This is a promise basically saying to the buyer that we're going to be giving you marketable title. That's the seller's responsibility. The buyer's responsibility is to make sure that their financing is in order. So buyers, you're now going to go into the commitment letter phase. So you're basically working on getting that commitment. Sellers, you're working on getting that abstract updated, or you're working on getting that survey updated. And most of the time, both. Again, depending on where you are. Some places do not do surveys. I recommend it. It's just better to see what you're actually buying versus a legal description. It's better and it's cheap. It's a couple $100. You're not going to break the bank on it. And it's just a little bit cleaner of a deal. Personal recommendation, but not all places require it. So, seller, you're going to be updating the abstract and survey. Buyer, you're going to be getting your commitment letter. If you're a cash buyer, you're just sitting pretty. You're not doing anything. At this point as well, there's going to be your inspection periods. Those have to happen in the agreed upon timeline. So if you did get a home inspection, if you did get a radon check or whatever necessary inspections are in your area, this is the time to do it. You're doing it right up front, getting everything checked before you go through the process. Next phase, title comes in. At this point, title is getting reviewed to make sure that it's marketable. When title is coming in, this is where delays happen. And this is a knock on wood, kick the trash can kind of moment. Make sure it's clear what the issue is up front. Because if your seller has a lot of liens on the property that people didn't know about, if they have issues, they have to get resolved. And this is typically where most of your delays are going to be, is right here in this title review period. So this is where due diligence goes a long way. But understand, if there are title issues, no amount of yelling or screaming is going to make that go by any faster. It has to be clean. And you as a buyer want to make sure that it's done right before you take the next step forward. It will work out and these issues will get resolved, but keep in mind, it does take time. Those issues, you do not want them to come back, 5 years from now. You want them done right. You want to make sure you're with a team that does it right. And you want to make sure that you are protected. So that phase, very important, but can cause delays. But just be patient. It's all part of the process, and it's there to protect the buyer from getting into something that they don't necessarily want to get into. I don't think a buyer wants to take a $50,000 bath because the seller has all these judgments and liens on them. No one wants to do that. With that being said, title insurance, it's a couple $100, depending on the circumstances. It's totally worth it. Just keep that in mind. It's something that people always ask you. Again, that's something, talk to your attorney about, but title insurance is a thing. Very, very smart to get. I would personally recommend it. That's just me. It's a couple $100 and protects you for the entire time you're in the property, but I will go over title insurance in another video, not to drag things along. So at that point, you've got titles in, surveys in, title's been reviewed, financial, you've got a commitment letter, they've issued a clear to close. At this point, you are now ready to schedule. Once everything's been reviewed, once the financial piece has been cleared up, you are finally ready to schedule. One thing to note with the clear to close, sometimes it's harder for certain people to get a clear to close than others. things that might slow it down: if you have an LLC or you have income that's a little bit harder to prove, sometimes it could slow up your entire financing piece and slow things down a little bit. So just be patient with that, but also start the process early. So keep pushing on your financial end to finally get that clear to close. Also, most of the time, there's two different types of clear to close. There's a financial clear to close, which comes directly from your lender, basically saying, hey, Joe Schmo, you are good to go. Other clear to close is your title clear to close, which comes directly from your title company or your attorneys. They're going to say, hey, so-and-so, we're good to go on the title end, which means you're financially clear, and your title clear, which means you are officially ready to schedule. Once you're ready to schedule, it's all about just when everybody's ready. Is the house vacant? Stuff like that. Just minor logistics. So that is the whole process. And the reason I'm going over this is to manage expectations, because a lot of times people get upset in a transaction more times than not because they don't understand the process. And when you don't understand something, oftentimes the most common response is just aggression. You're just angry. I mean, I would be angry if I didn't know what was going on. I just want an answer. So I made this video just to help people understand the full process, so that when you are going through the process and you hit a delay, you at least understand where it's coming from. And you at least understand that, hey, we're in this phase. This is what the delay is. It's unfortunate, but at the same time, it's there to help you in the long run. And again, it's all about understanding the process, how things go. And if you have any questions on this one, please reach out to me. This is a lot to go over in a short period of time. So I probably rushed it a little bit, but again, if you have questions, reach out to me personally and I can answer any questions you have with this. It is a lot, but I do think that understanding the process is so important. And the only way you can speed up a transaction is if you understand the process in its entirety. So if you have any questions, please reach out to me, comment below, and as always, stay free.